January 26, 1945. 14:20 hours. Holtzwihr, France. A German aid station 3 kilometers behind the front line received casualties at a rate medical personnel had never experienced in 3 years of war. Oberstreiter Klaus Dietrich, 22 years old from Hamburg, sat against the aid station wall watching medics work frantically on men from his company, the 2nd Mountain Division's 3rd Battalion. 1 hour earlier, Dietrich's company had attacked with 250 men and 6 Panzer IV tanks against a single American position. The objective was clear: destroy one M10 tank destroyer and eliminate the officer directing American artillery fire. Intelligence reported the position lightly defended. The attack should have succeeded quickly. Now, Dietrich counted survivors: 70 men from 250. All 6 tanks burned in the snow-covered field. The American officer was still alive, still calling artillery, still firing his weapon. One man. 50 German casualties inflicted personally, according to the American citation that would later award 1st Lieutenant Audie Murphy the Medal of Honor. The weapon was not a secret Wunderwaffe, not some technological marvel born in American laboratories rushed to the front in 1945. It was a machine gun that had first entered service in 1933, 12 years before this January afternoon in Alsace. A weapon so mechanically simple that American factories had produced nearly 2 million of them. A weapon German intelligence had initially dismissed as crude and unsophisticated. The Browning M2.50 caliber heavy machine gun. Murphy, 20 years old from Kingston, Texas, had climbed aboard the burning M10 tank destroyer and operated its turret-mounted .50 caliber machine gun for 60 minutes under direct German fire. The citation signed by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch on June 2, 1945, would confirm approximately 50 casualties inflicted by Murphy alone, using only that weapon. But Murphy's action at Holtzwihr was not unique. It was simply the most dramatic example of a pattern that had emerged across every theater where German forces encountered American troops. From the deserts of North Africa, where the weapon first appeared in British hands through Lend-Lease, to the skies over the Reich, where German fighter pilots learned to fear bomber defensive fire, to the hedgerows of Normandy, where every American vehicle seemed to mount one, the M2 Browning had become omnipresent. German soldiers called it .50, .50. They recognized its distinctive sound, deeper and more deliberate than the rapid-fire chatter of German machine guns. 450 to 575 rounds per minute. Each massive half-inch diameter projectile weighing 707 grains, traveling at 2,910 feet per second, carrying 12,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. What German forces discovered between 1942 and 1945 would fundamentally challenge their understanding of modern warfare. The Americans had not built the most sophisticated heavy machine gun. They had built something far more dangerous, the most reliable heavy machine gun, produced in overwhelming quantities, supplied with seemingly unlimited ammunition, and employed a corded doctrine that valued volume of fire over precision. The hatred began not with fear, but with a medical officer's observations. If this kind of in-depth military history breakdown is your thing, the real accounts from German soldiers and commanders who faced these weapons, the technical details that changed how wars were fought, the strategic implications that shaped modern doctrine. Hit that subscribe button now. It really helps us keep bringing you these untold stories from World War II and beyond. All right, let's get into how a machine gun designed in 1917 became the most feared weapon in the American arsenal, and why even Germany's best soldiers couldn't overcome what it represented. Oberar's Dr. Heinrich Müller, 34 years old from Berlin, served as senior medical officer with the 352nd Infantry Division throughout the Normandy campaign. After his capture near Falaise in August 1944, American intelligence officers conducted extensive debriefings. Muller's testimony, preserved in Interrogation Report MI 14/352-08-44, provided the first systematic medical analysis of .50 caliber wounds from the German perspective. In my 3 years as a military surgeon, I treated wounds from every weapon type: rifle bullets, machine gun fire, artillery fragments, flamethrowers, even phosphorus burns. The .50 caliber wounds were categorically different. Müller described wound patterns in clinical detail. Entry wounds might measure 13 to 15 millimeters, relatively small. Exit wounds, when they existed, could measure 80 to 120 millimeters. The temporary wound cavity created by the massive projectile's energy transfer would be 10 to 15 times the bullet diameter. Internal organs would liquefy from hydrostatic shock. Bones would not fracture cleanly, but shatter into dozens of fragments. Soldiers who survived the initial impact rarely survived evacuation to field hospitals. The tissue destruction was so extensive that even immediate surgery could not repair the damage. I estimate fewer than 30% of soldiers with torso wounds from .50 caliber fire survived more than 1 hour, even with immediate intervention. Limb wounds almost invariably required amputation. There was simply too much destroyed tissue to salvage. But Muller's testimony revealed something beyond physical trauma. German units that came under sustained .50 caliber fire suffered psychological casualties, combat exhaustion, breakdown of unit cohesion, at rates significantly higher than units facing conventional small arms fire. Soldiers who had been under .50 caliber fire, even those not physically wounded, showed severe stress symptoms requiring evacuation from frontline service. The sound alone, that deep, rhythmic thunder, created anticipatory anxiety. Men who had survived Russian artillery barrages and tank assaults would refuse to leave cover when they heard American .50 caliber fire. It was not cowardice. It was rational calculation. The weapon could not be survived through skill or tactical excellence. Survival was pure chance. This psychological impact had first manifested in North Africa, where German forces encountered the weapon in unexpected circumstances. November 8, 1942. 2 o'clock hours. El Alamein, Egypt. Hauptmann Ernst Gunther Bade, 28 years old, from Hanover, commanded a company in the 15th Panzer Division under General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel. The Afrika Korps had fought British and Commonwealth forces for nearly 2 years. Bade's men were veterans, experienced soldiers who understood desert warfare and respected their opponent's capabilities. During the German withdrawal from El Alamein, Bade's company attempted a night infiltration to delay British pursuit. At 2 o'clock hours precisely, lead elements encountered a British defensive position, not identified in reconnaissance. What happened next would be repeated thousands of times over the next 3 years. The British position erupted with fire, not the relatively light .303 brand guns German forces knew well, not even the heavier Vickers machine guns. This was something different, deeper, more sustained, more devastating. Tracers arced across the desert night in streams that never seemed to end. Bade's company took 40% casualties in less than 10 minutes. The survivors withdrew in disorder. In his post-war memoir published in 1951, Bade described the engagement. We had faced British machine gun positions many times. We knew their tactics, weapons, capabilities. This was different. The volume of fire was unprecedented. The tracers, every fifth round glowing like meteors, showed sustained bursts that would have exhausted any weapon's ammunition supply. But the fire never stopped. It was continuous, disciplined, aimed. When German forces recovered casualties at dawn, Bade saw wounds unlike any he had witnessed. Men hit in legs had femurs shattered into fragments. Men hit in arms lost entire limbs. One soldier struck in the shoulder had the round travel through his torso and exit through his opposite hip. He lived 3 hours in unimaginable agony before dying. Bade's battalion commander initially believed the British had deployed 20mm automatic cannons. Later, when German forces captured a British position, they found the weapons. M2 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, American-made, supplied through Lend-Lease in vast quantities. German engineers examined the captured weapons carefully. Simple construction, air-cooled, belt-fed from disintegrating links. Each position had thousands of rounds of ammunition. The British had learned what the Americans would demonstrate across Europe. This weapon, properly supplied, could dominate defensive positions. The Africa campaign provided German forces their first sustained exposure to the .50 caliber. Most did not yet understand what they faced. That understanding would come in the skies over Germany. September 6, 1943. The skies over Stuttgart, Germany. Lieutenant Heinrich Wormhela, 24 years old, from Munich, rolled his Focke-Wulf 190 into an attack dive from 8,000 meters. Below, 388 B-17 flying fortresses droned towards Stuttgart's industrial district in the first major American daylight raid on the city. Wormhela was an ace with 93 confirmed victories. He had fought in the Battle of Britain, over the Eastern Front, across the Mediterranean. He was confident in his aircraft. For 20mm cannons and 213mm machine guns, and absolutely confident in his skills. At 800 meters, he opened fire. Cannons thundered. Shells streaked toward the lead bombers. Then the sky became steel. Each bee, 17 carried 13 M2 Browning machine guns. A formation of 36 bombers meant 468 heavy machine guns firing the same .50 caliber cartridge effective to 1,830 meters. Combined offensive firepower, 6,000 rounds per minute. What Allied planners called mutual support zones. What German pilots experienced as walls of metal no fighter could safely penetrate. Wormhela's FW-190 shuddered violently. A .50 caliber round tore through his left wing, destroying aileron control cables. Another punched through the engine cowling, severing an oil line. A third struck his armored headrest and ricocheted into the canopy frame, spider-webbing the plexiglass inches from his face. He broke off, diving away trailing smoke and oil, struggling to maintain control. He coaxed his crippled fighter back to bobbling an airfield with no hydraulics and minimal control authority. Ground crew counted 23.50 caliber strikes. 7 had hit critical systems. Wormhela survived. 9 pilots from his Jägerschwader did not return. Men with an average of 40 combat missions each. Irreplaceable experience lost in a single afternoon. The Stuttgart raid cost the Americans 45 B-17s, an 11.6% loss rate. But the Luftwaffe lost something it could never replace. Veteran pilots who understood their aircraft and tactics. Green recruits now filled training units, men who would last an average of 7 combat missions. What Wormhela and surviving pilots did not yet fully comprehend was that they were encountering an entirely different philosophy of warfare. Germans had built their air force around precision. Skilled pilots flying sophisticated aircraft armed with powerful cannons that could destroy bombers with well-placed shots. The Americans had solved the problem differently, not through precision, but through overwhelming volume. Each B-17G carried 5,000 to 7,000 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition distributed across 13 gun positions. Some crews stuffed additional cans wherever space allowed. The philosophy was elegantly simple. Put enough bullets in the air, and some will hit. And .50 caliber bullets, even without explosive charges, cause catastrophic damage. In his post-war debriefing with American intelligence officers in March 1946, Wormhela articulated what German fighter pilots came to understand. We called them Die Fliegenden Festungen, the flying fortresses. What made them fortresses was not armor or formation discipline. It was those .50 caliber machine guns that never stopped firing, never jammed, never gave us openings. We lost more pilots to bomber defensive fire than to American fighters until mid-1944. You see the tracers, 1 round in 5. You know that for every tracer, for more bullets you cannot see are in that same trajectory. When you close to effective cannon range, 400 to 500 meters, you're already inside their maximum killing zone. They've been firing at you since 1,500 meters. Our cannons were powerful. A single 20 millimeters hit could destroy an engine, but our cannons jammed. The 108 Malawian Quach's 30 millimeters cannon jammed constantly. The American .50 caliber simply worked. It fired continuously. It functioned at minus 40 degrees Celsius. The barrels glowed red from sustained fire, and they kept shooting. Lieutenant Wolfgang Fischer, 26 years old from Berlin, flew Bf-109G fighters in JG-88, defending the Reich against American daylight raids. He survived 127 combat missions before being shot down over Hamburg in July 1944. In his post-war testimony, Fischer described the fundamental difference. Our weapons required careful fire discipline. We had perhaps 12 to 15 seconds of firing time before ammunition exhaustion. We aimed carefully, fired short, precise bursts, made every shot count. The American P-47 carried 8.50 caliber machine guns with 425 rounds each, nearly 50 seconds of continuous fire. They did not need precision. They could fire long bursts, walk fire onto targets, saturate areas with bullets. Volume defeated precision. Reliability defeated sophistication. Industrial production defeated tactical excellence. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey, conducted after the war, documented the impact. From June 1943 through March 1944, German fighter losses to bomber defensive fire exceeded losses to American fighter escorts. Even after long-range P-51 Mustangs began accompanying bombers deep into Germany in early 1944, bomber defensive fire continued inflicting 30 to 40% of total Luftwaffe fighter losses on daylight missions. The psychological damage was cumulative. Young pilots joining units in late 1943 received dire warnings. Never close to less than 400 meters. Never attack from astern. Never make more than one pass. Never assume a damaged bomber is defenseless. The bombers were fortresses because of their .50 caliber machine guns. German fighter tactics evolved desperately. Head-on attacks diving from altitude. Attacks from directly astern accepting concentrated tail gun fire. Attacks from below exploiting ball turret reverse limitations. Attacks from above with rockets fire beyond .50 caliber range. Nothing worked consistently. American gunners had overlapping fields of fire designed into the bomber's layout. Every approach angle brought attackers under fire from multiple positions. The combat box formations, 18 to 21 aircraft in three-dimensional space, maximized overlapping defensive fire between aircraft. There was no safe approach. By mid-1944, Luftwaffe fighter effectiveness against American daylight raids had collapsed. Losses were unsustainable. Experienced pilots were gone. The .50 caliber had not achieved this alone. American fighter escorts and numerical superiority played major roles, but bomber defensive firepower made every attack costly, grinding down German fighter strength through cumulative attrition. June 6, 1944, 16:30 hours. Normandy, France. Oberstleutnant Hans von Luck, 33 years old from Flensburg, commanded elements of the 21st Panzer Division defending against the Allied invasion. Von Luck had fought at Alamein under Rommel, earned the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, and would later publish Panzer Commander, one of the most respected German accounts of the war. What von Luck discovered in the Norman hedgerows would fundamentally alter his understanding of modern warfare. American doctrine had placed .50 caliber machine guns on virtually every combat vehicle. Jeeps, trucks, half-tracks, tanks, tank destroyers. Even supply vehicles carried them for convoy protection. The Americans had achieved something Germans had never attempted: universal heavy machine gun coverage across their entire force structure. Von Luck's initial reaction mixed professional curiosity with tactical disdain. German doctrine organized infantry squads around the machine gun. The MG-34 or its successor, the MG-42, firing 1,200 rounds per minute. German squads carried 1,800 rounds per gun and organized tactics around supporting the crew. The concept, Einheitsmaschinengewehr or general-purpose machine gun, was tactically sophisticated. NATO would later adopt it because it was fundamentally sound. But Germans had never imagined the scale of American .50 caliber employment. A single American armored division would have hundreds of .50 caliber machine guns mounted on vehicles, not as main armament, but as secondary weapons for air defense and infantry suppression. American infantry divisions had organic .50 caliber sections at company and battalion level. Anti-aircraft battalions with M16 quad-mount half-tracks could be repurposed for ground combat, bringing 4.50 caliber guns per vehicle to bear. In his memoir, von Luck described observing an American armored column moving through Bocage country south of Cannes. I counted 47 vehicles: tanks, tank destroyers, half-tracks, trucks, jeeps. At least 35 had heavy machine guns visible on turrets or pintle mounts. They were not moving tactically. They simply drove down the road, as if on parade. I ordered Panzerfaust teams to prepare ambush. Standard doctrine that had worked against British and Soviet forces. Disable the lead vehicles, trap the column, destroy trapped vehicles systematically. When my teams initiated the ambush, destroying the lead Sherman, the volume of return fire was incomprehensible. Every American vehicle seemed to have a .50 caliber that opened fire simultaneously. They did not aim carefully. They simply hosed down the entire tree line with continuous fire. The volume was so intense, my men could not raise their heads to fire second shots. The Americans did not take cover. They drove forward, shooting continuously. My men retreated without achieving additional hits. I had 5 casualties. The Americans had 1 disabled tank. The tactical exchange favored them completely, achieved not through superior tactics, but through sheer volume of fire from weapons that never ran out of ammunition. American supply convoys employed documented tactics German intelligence identified but could never effectively counter. Vehicles on the right trained .50 caliber guns right. Vehicles on the left trained left. When ambushed, entire convoys erupted in sustained fire covering both flanks simultaneously, creating intersecting fields of fire, making effective ambush nearly impossible. This was not improvised. This was doctrine, taught in training, practice and exercises, executed with mechanical precision in combat. American convoy commanders had specific tables of organization dictating weapon placement throughout columns. A 50-vehicle convoy might have 30 or more .50 caliber machine guns, all positioned for overlapping field of fire, all supplied with thousands of rounds, all operated by soldiers trained to fire immediately and continuously when ambushed. Gefreiter Otto Carius, 21 years old from Zweibrücken, served as a Panzer gunner in the 352nd Infantry Division. He survived Normandy and was captured near Falaise in August 1944. In his interrogation, Carius described the evolution and ultimate failure of German anti-convoy tactics. In the first weeks, we positioned teams of 4 or 5 men with Panzerfaust and MG-42s along roads where American convoys traveled. Our doctrine was sound, developed through years of combat. Wait for the convoy to enter the kill zone, destroy lead and rear vehicles to trap it, then systematically destroy trapped vehicles. This had worked against British convoys in North Africa and Soviet convoys in Russia. Against the Americans, it failed completely. When we initiated ambush by destroying a vehicle, return fire was immediate and overwhelming. We might destroy one vehicle, maybe 2, then their .50 calibers tore apart our positions. We learned trees did not provide cover. The .50 caliber rounds cut through trunks 15 to 20 centimeters in diameter. Stone walls that should have stopped rifle fire were penetrated. Men died behind cover that had protected German soldiers throughout the war. After losing 3 complete ambush teams in 1 week, 17 dead, 11 wounded, our commander ordered us to attack only isolated vehicles, never convoys. But isolated vehicles were rare. The Americans moved in strength precisely because they knew we could not effectively attack their convoys. American armored columns employed reconnaissance by fire, firing .50 caliber machine guns continuously into any suspicious location as they advanced. Tree lines received sustained bursts every 50 meters. Farm buildings received fire whether occupied or empty. Stone walls, hedgerows, any terrain feature that could conceal troops. The volume of fire would either suppress hidden German positions or provoke return fire, revealing their locations to American artillery and air support. Either way, Americans maintained initiative. Unteroffizier Franz Weber, 27 years old from Stuttgart, commanded an MG-42 squad in the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. He survived the Falaise pocket and was captured by Canadian forces in August 1944. In his debriefing, Weber articulated what many German veterans felt. Against the Russians, we faced human wave attacks and artillery barrages. Terrifying, but we understood the tactics. We could anticipate, prepare, use superior training and equipment to inflict disproportionate casualties. Against the British, we faced methodical advances with excellent coordination. Cautious, professional, skilled, we could respect that warfare. Against the Americans, we faced something entirely different. They shot at everything. Shadows, buildings that might contain troops or might be empty. Hedgerows we had behind, and hedgerows with no one behind them. They fired because they had unlimited ammunition, and we did not. During one 3-day period in July, my 8-man squad fired approximately 4,000 rounds total from our MG-42. We conserved ammunition because resupply was uncertain. An American platoon in the same sector, I watched through binoculars, fired what I estimated was 15,000 to 20,000 rounds from their machine guns in the same period. 10 times as much ammunition. But it worked. We could not move during daylight. We could not reposition. We could not counterattack. We were pinned by continuous fire. After 2 weeks in Bocage, my men would not leave cover during daylight. Not cowardice. These were Kursk veterans. It was mathematics. Movement meant exposure. Exposure meant .50 caliber fire. That meant death or wounds that would end the soldier's war. The M16 multiple gun motor carriage exemplified American firepower philosophy at its extreme. An M3 half-track mounting 4.50 caliber machine guns in a powered Maxim M45 turret, originally designed for anti-aircraft defense. Combined rate of fire, 2,200 rounds per minute, nearly 37 rounds per second. American soldiers called it the meat chopper. The name was earned. Official reports from the 473rd AAA Battalion documented that by late 1944, the M16's primary anti-aircraft mission had become secondary. The Luftwaffe had been largely defeated over Western Europe. American anti-aircraft units found themselves repurposed for ground support, and the M16 proved devastatingly effective. Oberstreiter Helmut Schreiber, 23 years old from Dresden, survived an M16 engagement near Bastogne on December 22, 1944. evacuated to a German field hospital with severe leg wounds. He was captured when American forces overran the hospital on December 26. His medical records and interrogation provided one of the most detailed German accounts of being under M16 fire. Our company, approximately 120 men from the 26th Volksgrenadier Division, was ordered to attack an American supply depot near a crossroads west of Bastogne. Intelligence said logistics troops defended it, not combat infantry. We expected light resistance. We advanced in 3 platoons across open ground at dusk, approximately 200 meters from the American position, when we heard engines starting. I thought they were evacuating trucks. Then I saw the vehicle, a half-track with 4 machine guns and a turret. The turret rotated toward us, smooth and fast, powered by motor. I cannot adequately describe what happened next. The sound was like heavy cloth tearing, magnified 100 times, continuous, never stopping. The entire front rank of our formation simply disappeared. Not fell, but disappeared into red mist. Men were cut down, so quickly many did not have time to drop to ground or take cover. The tracers created 4 solid streams of light, sweeping across our company like a broom. I threw myself into a shallow depression, barely 20 centimeters deep. Fire continued for what seemed like hours, probably less than 2 minutes. When it stopped, I counted 11 men still moving from my platoon of 38. Most casualties had not been hit once or twice, but multiple times. I saw bodies struck by 5, 10, 15 rounds. The weapon fired so many bullets, so quickly, that men in the kill zone had no chance. The medical officer who treated me said he had never seen wounds like those. Massive tissue destruction, bones shattered into fragments, catastrophic blood loss from multiple wound channels. Many wounded never reached the hospital. They bled out in minutes. You cannot stop bleeding from 5 or 6.50 caliber wounds. The body does not have enough blood. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, nicknamed the Jug by American pilots, carried 8 M2 Browning machine guns in its wings for preside. A single fighter could deliver 4,400 rounds per minute during strafing runs. To put that in perspective, one P-47 could fire more rounds in 1 minute than an entire German infantry company could fire with all rifles and machine guns combined. A flight of 4 P-47s meant 32.50 caliber machine guns delivering more than 17,000 rounds per minute. German ground forces learned to recognize the P-47's distinctive shape and the sound preceding death. Deep rumbling thunder building in intensity as the aircraft dove, followed by the staccato roar of 8 machine guns firing simultaneously. A strafing run by 4 P-47s followed specific patterns. The flight leader would identify the target, convoy, troop concentration, artillery position, and begin his dive from 3,000 to 4,000 meters. The other 3 aircraft would follow and trail, spaced 10 to 15 seconds apart. Each pilot would open fire at 600 to 800 meters and continue firing to the dive, walking fire across the target area. The entire engagement might last 30 to 40 seconds from first to last aircraft. In that time, for P-47s could deliver 2,000 to 3,000 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition into an area the size of a football field. Survivors describe the effect as a horizontal rainstorm of metal, leaving nothing intact. Oberstfreiter Johann Becker, 25 years old from Cologne, served as supply sergeant in the 2nd SS Panzer Division. He survived multiple strafing attacks during the retreat from Normandy in August 1944. His account captured the helplessness German ground troops felt. You hear the engines first, deep rumble growing louder. You have perhaps 5 seconds from when you hear the sound to when they open fire. By the time you look up, they are already firing. You see muzzle flashes twinkling along wings. Then tracers, lines of light that seem to float toward you slowly, but arrive instantly. The bullets hit road, vehicles, men, all at once. No sequence allowing you to anticipate where fire will strike. It is simply everywhere. No cover works. Stone walls crumble. Trees are cut down. I saw an oak perhaps 40 centimeters in diameter simply fall after AP-47 fired into it 3 or 4 seconds. Metal tears like paper. You can be behind a truck one moment, and the truck is gone the next, burning metal scattered across the road. I learned to abandon vehicles the instant I heard aircraft engines. Better to lose the vehicle than vehicle and crew. Some men hid under vehicles, thinking metal would protect them. The .50 caliber rounds would penetrate from above, ricochet inside engine compartments, kill everyone beneath. One strafing attack hit a truck with 6 men hiding under it. All 6 were killed by ricochets. Not one round struck them directly. The safest option was a run. Sprint away from any vehicle or equipment. Throw yourself in a ditch. Press your face into dirt. Pray pilots did not see you. Even then, survival was luck. I saw men lying flat struck by rounds that had already penetrated vehicles or ricocheted off roads. The bullets were still lethal after passing through metal and concrete. After 2 weeks in Normandy, our division would not move during daylight under any circumstances. Supplies came only at night. Reinforcements only at night. Artillery repositioned only at night. We became a nocturnal army because American aircraft owned daylight, and those .50 caliber guns killed everything that moved. The P-47 proved particularly effective in armed reconnaissance missions, free-arranging hunter-killer patrols over assigned sectors. Rather than striking predetermined objectives, flights of 4 to 8 P-47s would patrol German-held territory, looking for targets of opportunity. Any German vehicle moving during daylight risked attack. Any troop column. Any supply convoy. Any artillery position revealing itself by firing. Any railway locomotive. Any command post identified by vehicle presence. The ammunition capacity, approximately 425 rounds per gun, 3,400 rounds total, allowed pilots to engage multiple targets per sortie. A pilot might strafe a convoy on his initial pass, expending 500 rounds, climb back to altitude and spot a German tank platoon, dive to attack, expending another 800 rounds, continue patrol and spot a railway junction, dive to attack locomotives, expending 600 rounds, finally strafe a crossroads on return flight, expending remaining ammunition. For targets engaged in a single 90-minute mission with the same 8.50 caliber machine guns American factories produced by hundreds of thousands, supplied with ammunition American industry produced by billions of rounds. Major Heinrich Bahr, 28 years old from Leipzig, was a Luftwaffe ace with 220 confirmed victories who survived the war. He had flown on every front. France 1940, Battle Britain, Eastern Front, Mediterranean, Defense of the Reich. In post-war interviews conducted in 1947, Bahr described the tactical implications. Our Bf-109G-6 carried one 20mm MG-151 cannon and two 13mm MG-131 machine guns. Total ammunition, 150 rounds of cannon, 300 rounds per machine gun. In combat, this gave us perhaps 12 to 15 seconds of firing time. We aimed carefully, fired short, precise bursts, made every shot count. The American P-47 carried 8.50 caliber machine guns with 425 rounds each, nearly 50 seconds of continuous fire, more than 3 times our endurance. They did not need careful aim. They fired long bursts, walked fire onto targets, saturated areas with bullets, guaranteed hits through volume rather than precision. In air combat, this gave enormous advantage in deflection shooting. They could open fire at 600 meters, far beyond effective range, and walk fire toward the target using tracers as aiming references. By the time tracers reached the target, they had adjusted aim, and later rounds in the burst would hit. We had to wait until 300 meters to guarantee hits, and by then we were inside range where American pilots could hit us with volume fire. But the real difference was reliability. Our 20mm cannons jammed frequently. Perhaps one attack in 3, our cannons would fail. American pilots learned this. If they survived our first burst, we might not get a second chance. The American .50 caliber did not jam. I shot down 7 P-47s during the war. I saw many more damaged. I never saw a P-47's gun stop firing due to mechanical failure. They would fire until ammunition was exhausted. German forces adapted by moving primarily at night and in bad weather, conditions limiting American air operations. But this adaptation came at enormous cost to operational tempo and logistics. Supplies that should have taken 3 hours to move required 12 to 18 hours when restricted to darkness. Reinforcements that should have arrived within a day required 3 or 4 days of slow night movement. Artillery units needing to reposition after firing found themselves trapped during daylight, vulnerable to air attack if they moved, vulnerable to American counter-battery fire if they remained stationary. The Luftwaffe's inability to contest American air superiority by mid-1944 meant German ground forces operated under constant threat of air attack. Fighter cover over German positions was rare and brief. The Americans had achieved air supremacy, complete dominance. Response time from forward air controllers calling strikes to P-47s arriving on target, as little as 15 to 20 minutes. The combination of ground-mounted and air-delivered .50 caliber fire created comprehensive suppression across the entire battlefield depth. German units could not move safely in daylight because of strafing. They could not move safely at night because American ground forces used reconnaissance by fire to interdict roads and trails. They could not concentrate for counterattacks because American doctrine called for immediate engagement of any identified German formation with all available firepower. This reality broke German combat effectiveness in the West. Not a single decisive battle, not a wonder weapon, but the cumulative weight of facing an opponent whose basic heavy machine gun was present in such overwhelming quantities that traditional military responses became irrelevant. July 25, 1944, 9:38 hours. St. Lo, France. General Major Fritz Behrlein, 45 years old from Würzburg, commanded Panzer Lehr Division, one of the Wehrmacht's elite armored formations, and perhaps the best-equipped division in the German army. Behrlein had served as Chief of Staff to Rommel in North Africa, fought at Alamein, commanded armor in Italy, earned the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords. His division held defensive positions south of St. Lo, blocking the American breakout from a Normandy beachhead. Panzer Lehr had approximately 11,000 men, 183 tanks, and assault guns, including 37 Panthers and a company of Tigers, one of the most combat-capable units available to defend against Allied offensives. At 9:38 hours, Behrlein was in his command post when the first wave of American heavy bombers appeared overhead. Over the next 110 minutes, 1,800 heavy bombers and 550 fighter bombers dropped approximately 3,300 tons of high-explosive and fragmentation bombs on German positions in a rectangular area measuring 7,000 meters by 2,500 meters. Navigation errors resulted in bombs falling short, striking American units and causing 111 American deaths, including Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, the highest-ranking American officer lost enemy action in the European theater. But the bombing, devastating as it was, did not destroy Panzer Lehr. Behrlein had dispersed units in the bocage terrain, small groups hidden in hedgerows, orchards, sunken roads. Many positions survived, occupants disoriented and shocked, but still combat-capable. Behrlein's command post was buried under debris, but he survived. What destroyed Panzer Lehr was what came after. American armored divisions, the 2nd and 3rd Armored along with 1st Infantry Division, reinforced by separate tank and tank destroyer battalions, attacked through the bomb sector starting at 11 o'clock hours. What Behrlein's day's troops encountered was not simply American tanks and infantry, but a mobile wall of firepower that never stopped, never slowed, never gave German forces time to organize resistance. Every American Sherman tank had an M2 Browning mounted on the turret roof. Every M10 and M18 tank destroyer had one. Every M8 armored car, every M3 half-track. Even jeeps carrying forward observers had .50 calibers on pedestal mounts. The American columns advanced with every weapon firing continuously, marching fire, suppressing any position before it could engage effectively. Lieutenant Karl Schmidt, 24 years old from Munich, commanded a Panther tank in the 130th Panzer Regiment. His tank survived the bombing hidden in an orchard south of the target zone. When American forces advanced, Schmidt moved his Panther into hold-down position behind a hedgerow to engage American Shermans. His account comes from interrogation reports after his capture on July 29th. I had an excellent firing position. My Panther's 75mm gun could penetrate any American tank at ranges to 2,000 meters. I had 5 rounds of armor-piercing ammunition loaded. I identified 3 Shermans approaching on the road, perhaps 800 meters distant. I prepared to engage. Before I could fire, the Americans opened fire with their machine guns. Not at my tank. They had not seen me, but at hedgerows and buildings on both sides of the road. Continuous fire from what looked like 20 or 30 machine guns, all firing simultaneously. The noise was incredible. Tracers looked like streams of light. They were not aiming at specific targets. They were saturating the entire area with fire. I watched through my periscope as .50 caliber rounds hit the hedgerow in front of my position. Branches were cut away. Small trees fell. I realized if I raised my head above the hedgerow to acquire a better sight picture, I would be hit immediately. The volume was so intense that exposure meant certain death. I decided to engage from concealed position, using only periscope for aiming. I fired 1 round, hit a Sherman in the front slope, not penetration but solid hit. The Sherman stopped. The other American tanks immediately traversed turrets toward my position. But more importantly, every machine gun in the column opened fire on the hedgerow, where my tank was hidden. The .50 caliber fire was not effective against my Panthers armor. The rounds could not penetrate, but they destroyed my vision. The periscope was hit and shattered. Driver's vision blocks were hit. Commander's cupola vision blocks were hit. Within 30 seconds, I was blind. I could not see to aim. I could not see to move. I was trapped in an undamaged tank, rendered combat ineffective by machine gun fire that could not penetrate armor, simply by blinding it. I ordered my crew to abandon the tank, and we escaped on foot. I learned later American forces destroyed my Panther with thermite grenades after advancing past our position. The tank was mechanically perfect, fully armed, fully fueled, but it had been defeated by machine guns that could not penetrate armor, simply by blinding it and rendering it unable to fight. This pattern repeated across the entire Cobra battlefield. German tanks that survived bombing and were mechanically functional found themselves unable to engage effectively because sustained .50 caliber fire destroyed optical equipment, damaged external systems, forced tank commanders to button up, sealing themselves inside with severely limited visibility. But the greater impact was on German infantry and supporting units. Wehrlein watched his division disintegrate over 3 days, not primarily from tank engagements or artillery, but from constant .50 caliber fire that prevented forces from maneuvering, concentrating, mounting coordinated counterattacks. Infantry units trying to reposition during American advance were caught in open by reconnaissance by fire. Artillery units revealing positions by firing were immediately engaged by .50 caliber fire from American tanks and infantry, forcing crews to abandon guns. Supply vehicles attempting to bring ammunition forward were destroyed by marching fire. In his post-war memoirs written for the United States Army Historical Division, Wehrlein provided one of the most detailed German command-level analyses. By the time my division retreated from St. Lo on July 28th, it had ceased to exist as combat-effective formation. I had started with approximately 11,000 men and 183 armored vehicles. 3 days later, 2,200 effective soldiers, fewer than 40 operational tanks and assault guns. We had not been defeated in decisive battle. We had been ground down through continuous attrition. The Americans had solved modern warfare's fundamental problem. They found a way to project superior firepower without requiring superior training or tactics. Their .50 caliber machine guns, mounted on every vehicle, operated by soldiers with minimal specialized training, supplied with vast ammunition quantities, created baseline firepower my forces could not match with more sophisticated weapons and better trained crews. I had commanded some of the Wehrmacht's finest troops, veterans of North Africa and Eastern Front. I had excellent equipment, including Panthers and Tigers technically superior to anything Americans fielded. Our infantry were better trained in small unit tactics. Our machine gun crews were specialists with years of experience. But none of this mattered when American forces could bring overwhelming firepower to bear on any position, instantly and continuously, with weapons that function reliably in all conditions. Individual units achieved local tactical successes, ambushing patrols, knocking out isolated vehicles, holding positions longer than Americans expected. But these successes were meaningless in sustained attrition warfare where Americans could afford to lose 3 tanks to destroy one of ours, expend 10,000 rounds to kill 20 soldiers, make tactical mistakes, and overwhelm them with raw firepower. The .50 caliber machine gun was the foundation of American tactical superiority, not because it was exceptional, though it was reliable and effective, but because it was everywhere, always available, always supplied with sufficient ammunition that American commanders never needed to make agonizing decisions about fire discipline that German commanders faced daily. The legacy of the M2 Browning cannot be measured solely in World War II statistics, though those statistics are impressive. Nearly 2 million produced during war years. Billions of rounds of .50 BMG ammunition manufactured. Deployment on every American combat vehicle, every bomber, every fighter. Service with every allied nation through Lend-Lease. The true measure of the weapon's effectiveness is its continued service 92 years after entering production in 1933. The M2 Browning remains in active service with the United States military and armed forces worldwide. It has outlasted every weapon system that opposed it in World War II. The MG-42, excellent as it was, has been replaced by the MG-3. German 20mm cannons are museum pieces. The FW-190 and BF-109 that carried those cannons have long since been scrapped or preserved as historical artifacts. But the M2 Browning is still in production, still being manufactured by U.S. Ordnance, FN Herstal, and other contractors. still being issued to American combat units deploying to conflict zones, still mounted on vehicles, still employed in the same roles German soldiers feared in 1944, vehicle-mounted fire support, defensive positions, long-range suppression. The weapon has served in every American conflict since World War II. Korea, where Chinese and North Korean forces learned the same lessons Germans learned about the futility of mass attacks against positions defended by .50 caliber machine guns. Vietnam, where the M2 provided fire-based defense and convoy protection. Grenada and Panama. The Gulf War in 1991, where M2 equipped vehicles dominated Iraqi forces in open desert warfare. Sergeant First Class Paul Ray Smith, 33 years old, from Tampa, Florida, demonstrated the M2's continued effectiveness April 4th, 2003, near Baghdad International Airport during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Smith's engineering unit came under attack by approximately 100 Iraqi Republican Guard soldiers. Smith manned an M2 Browning mounted on an M113 armored personnel carrier and engaged the attacking force for nearly an hour until he was killed by enemy fire. His sustained, accurate fire, delivered from an exposed position on top of the vehicle, allowed evacuation of wounded American soldiers and prevented Iraqi forces from overrunning the position. Smith was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the first such award for actions in Iraq. The citation could have been written in 1945 for Audie Murphy at Holtzwihr. The weapon was the same. The tactical situation similar. Outnumbered American force using superior firepower to hold against numerically superior enemy. The mathematics of industrial warfare had not changed in 58 years. In Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021, American Special Operations Forces and conventional units mounted M2 Brownings on Humvee vehicles, MRAPs, and other platforms for convoy protection and fire support. Exactly the same role the weapon performed in France and Germany 1944 to 45. Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters learned the same lessons German soldiers learned 7 decades earlier. The .50 caliber can penetrate cover that stops rifle fire, has enough range to dominate battlefields at distances where AK-47 fire is ineffective, is supplied with enough ammunition that American forces never need to conserve fire. The weapon's longevity reflects something deeper than mechanical reliability, though that reliability is remarkable. It reflects the enduring validity of the American military philosophy the M2 embodies. Adequate weapons produced in vast quantities, supplied without restriction, employed according to doctrine that accepts material expenditure as the price of victory. This philosophy has proven more durable than any specific weapon technology. Modern American forces deploy sophisticated guided missiles striking targets 100 kilometers away with precision measured in meters. They deploy stealth aircraft invisible to radar. They deploy drones loitering over battlefields for hours, engaging targets with Hellfire missiles. They deploy satellite-guided artillery hitting targets on first round without registration fire. But they still deploy the M2 Browning. Because sometimes the most effective solution is not the most sophisticated but the most reliable. Sometimes overwhelming firepower delivered by a weapon that works every time is more valuable than precision delivered by a weapon that works most of the time. Understanding Tiger fuel consumption influenced American tank design for decades after the war. Similarly, understanding the strategic value of the M2's reliability influenced all subsequent American weapons procurement. The M16 rifle, adopted not because it was the best design available, but because it was adequate and could be produced in vast quantities. The M249 saw, filling squad automatic weapon role with belt-fed weapon emphasizing reliability and sustained fire. The M240 machine gun, replacing older designs with weapon emphasizing durability and ease of maintenance over sophistication. All followed the same pattern established by the M2 Browning. Not the most sophisticated designs available, but reliable weapons produced in vast quantities and supplied with ample ammunition. The lesson was universal and validated in every conflict since 1945. In industrial warfare, the side that can sustain higher material expenditure will prevail regardless of tactical skill disparities. The broader strategic implications became clear only in retrospect. German military planning assumed superior training and tactical excellence could offset enemy numerical advantages. This assumption proved catastrophically wrong when facing enemies, first the Soviet Union, then the United States, who could sustain material losses at rates Germany could not match. The .50 caliber machine gun demonstrated in the most visceral way possible that adequate weapons in overwhelming quantities trump sophisticated weapons in limited numbers. This lesson shaped American military procurement doctrine ever since and continues shaping it today. Modern main battle tanks continue the legacy of balancing firepower, protection, and mobility with sustainable logistics. The M1 Abrams, introduced in 1980, carries over 500 gallons of fuel and achieves approximately 0.6 miles per gallon. Poor by civilian standards, but sufficient for operational range, exceeding 300 miles on roads. Despite being a gas turbine-powered 70-ton vehicle, the Abrams maintained sufficient operational range for deep strikes and mobile operations. Designers ensured even the most powerful tanks can go the distance operationally, a lesson learned partly from analyzing both Tiger 712's fuel consumption and the M2's operational sustainability. The story of the M2 Browning teaches an enduring lesson about military technology complementary to Tiger 712's lesson. Where Tiger 712 demonstrated that superior weapons require sustainable logistics, the M2 Browning demonstrated that adequate weapons with superior logistics defeat superior weapons with inadequate logistics. The Germans created tactical masterpieces in the Tiger tank and MG-42 machine gun. German logistics could not sustain them in extended operations against enemies who controlled the air and systematically destroyed supply infrastructure. The Americans created an adequate weapon in the M2 Browning. American logistics sustained it so effectively that it became strategically decisive despite not being tactically superior to German weapons. The final assessment belongs to the contrast between two philosophies. German engineering pursued perfection. The best armor, the most powerful gun, the highest rate of fire. American engineering pursued sufficiency, adequate armor, adequate firepower, adequate rate of fire, all combined with superior reliability and industrial producibility. In extended warfare against opponents with greater industrial capacity, sufficiency defeated perfection. Reliability defeated sophistication. Sustainability defeated tactical excellence. The M2 Browning stands today as both monument and teacher. Monument to American industrial philosophy that valued mass production and reliability over individual excellence. Teacher the enduring principle that warfare requires sustainable systems engineering, not merely superior weapons. Tiger 712 sits in climate-controlled storage at Fort Moore, Georgia. Its 88mm gun silent forever. The Maybach engine that consumed fuel voraciously will never run again. But the lessons it taught continue resonating through armor schools, logistics courses, staff colleges studying modern mechanized warfare. Similarly, M2 Brownings remain in active service worldwide. Their distinctive sound still recognizable on training ranges and battlefields. The same basic design that entered service in 1933 still effective in 2025. The principles are timeless and universal. The weapon that terrorized German forces from 1942 to 1945 became the teacher that shaped modern combined arms doctrine. Not through a considerable strength alone, but through what those strengths represented. A complete system of industrial production, logistics support, tactical employment, and strategic sustainability. Germany learned through bitter experience that the best individual weapon means nothing without the industrial and logistical system to sustain across extended campaigns. America demonstrated that an adequate weapon supported by superior systems defeats a superior weapon without adequate systems. In mechanized warfare, the side that can sustain operations across distance and time wins. The Tiger forgot that fundamental rule and paid the price in thousands of abandoned hulks from Tunisia to Berlin. The M2 Browning embodied that rule and continues embodying it 92 years after entering service. The 84-pound steel weapon that German soldiers called Punktfünfnull with mixture of fear and grudging respect now serves quietly on bases worldwide. Its greatest contribution to military history was not the enemy soldiers it killed in combat, though those numbered in the hundreds of thousands, but the understanding provided about the essential relationship between tactical adequacy and strategic sustainability. In that understanding lies the complete story of the M2 Browning. An adequate weapon, made strategically decisive not through individual excellence, but through the complete industrial, logistical, and doctrinal system that sustained it. The weapon Germany learned to fear, not because it was technologically superior, but because it represented an approach to warfare Germany could not match. The marriage of adequate technology with overwhelming industrial capacity and unwavering logistical support. That approach won World War II. That approach continues winning today. And the M2 Browning continues serving as its most enduring symbol. Still reliable, still effective. Still in production 92 years after John Moses Browning designed it. The hatred was never for the machine gun itself. It was for what the machine gun represented. The overwhelming industrial might of a nation that could afford to place a heavy machine gun on every vehicle, supply it with unlimited ammunition, and replace losses faster than they occurred. A nation that valued reliability over sophistication, sustainability over perfection, adequate technology with superior systems over superior technology with inadequate systems. In the aid station at Holtzwihr on January 26, 1945, Oberstreiter Klaus Dietrich understood what German military leadership had refused to accept until far too late. Germany had lost the war not on the battlefield but in the factories. The Americans had not outfought the Wehrmacht. They had outproduced them, outsupplied them, and outlasted them. The M2 Browning, firing its 707 grain projectiles at 2,910 feet per second for 150 to 575 rounds per minute, supplied by an industrial base that produced 47 billion rounds of small arms ammunition during the war, was both symbol and instrument of that victory. 92 years later, it still is,